Hello everyone and welcome to this future seminar where we will present the findings of our new white paper that has just launched today. You had a chance to pre-read it if you signed up to this seminar and it's on how we integrate foresight in organizations. So this is the 18th future seminar that we host here at the Institute and I'm just going to give a brief introduction to who we are. So the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies is an independent futures think tank founded in 1969. Our purpose is to help people and organizations imagine, work with and shape the future. So that's why we're here. So we do this by applying our unique approach to future studies and foresight. And we have more than 50 years of global experience. And one of the contexts that we are in here today is that we as an institute offers organizational partnerships where we support organizations that have foresight capabilities or wants to have foresight capabilities in building them and keeping up to date with the landscape. My name is Toge Hanghøj. I'm the head of communications. I look forward to guiding you through this future seminar. And what we're here for today is to gain a better understanding on how organizations can leverage foresight. So in the process of making this white paper, we've conducted some interviews with 8 different organizations. Those interviews we have crunched and created a white paper out of. Today we're going to present the findings and we're going to discuss the thoughts that we have had in needing to create this white paper in the first place. I'm going to discuss this with my boss, Director Lasse Jonasson, who is a futurist and director here at the Institute. And I'm going to try to see if I can get him on thin ice. We're also going to speak to strategic foresight leader at the IKEA group, Maria Åkerlund, who is one of the foresight practitioners that have been so graceful that she has answered the questions and is included in this white paper. So stay tuned for the next 50 minutes or so. Then you will get all the insights from the white paper discussed. We can learn how Maria transitioned from insights to foresight at IKEA. And we will have a discussion on how we see the role of foresight practitioner develop in the future. There is a chat to the right of where you're sitting right now in YouTube. Please remember to ask any questions you have. At the end, we will answer as many as we can. So feel free. So first of all, while you're taking a sip of your coffee, Lasse, let me introduce you. And let me just jump right into the discussion about the white paper. So in the introduction to the white paper, you write, while foresight is increasingly recognized for its strategic value, its full potential, as well as how it integrates with other functions and decision-making outside of foresight functions, remain underexplored. So it's underexplored how foresight taps into the rest of the organization. Is that correct? And can you expand on that?
I definitely think so. This is, something we, to an increasing extent, realize while discussing this with foresight practitioners that I would say many of the people we have had the dialogue with both in this paper, but before we dived into developing this paper was people deeply infused and very knowledgeable about the discipline of foresight, but also people struggling or at least really being challenged by infusing this discipline into the rest of the organization. This was something that we definitely thought was underexplored and still is.
Okay, so why did you choose to write a white paper about the foresight function? What function does this white paper serve?
I think that what we first of all we realized that working with Foresight as we do, more and more of our dialogues became about how to work with this discipline within organizations. And when we had this dialogue, we also saw that a lot of the challenges that the people we spoke with were faced with were actually the same. At the same time, we also saw that there was a lot of different approaches to Foresight. So this was something that we simply, out of curiosity, couldn't help us not diving into and try to get our mind around how does this actually work in real life.
Can you give some examples of the differences, the diversity of viewpoints?
Definitely. I mean, at the first glance, when we speak with people, they say we are working with Foresight and we have a dialogue around what they do, and it seems like everyone is on the same page. And the further you dive into it, then you realize that maybe the Foresight is only related to consumers. Maybe they're only serving the marketing area at their company, and then you come from another approach where it was meant as thought leadership, where it was meant as only for strategic decision making within organizations. So I think that the different dialogues we have very concretely is that people reach out to us and sometimes they say, can you help us do a scenario process for the future of consumers? That's very concrete. We can help doing Foresight for them. But then yet another, and increasingly people reach out and said, we actually have some difficulties with our culture around this. Is that something you can help with? And that's obviously something very different than doing Foresight. So we also, of course, work a lot with that side of the coin.
Okay, so let me then ask you, and this is a discussion that we had earlier today actually. So would you say that if you are a Foresight practitioner in an organization, and perhaps Maria can answer this later as well, that you are, as a Foresight practitioner, embedded in an organization, you are sort of the key holder or the medium that will translate outside trends and signals, and then applying them to the landscape of the organization that you need to be embedded to understand. Is that the role the Foresight practitioner serves? And it varies, but I would say ideally the Foresight practitioner is not the only one doing Foresight. They do Foresight, they do structured Foresight, and then they understand in which situation does the people within their organization need a more futures-oriented mindset. Because basically it's the decision makers in the organization that makes the decisions, odd enough. But the decision makers outside of Foresight, right? They're taking all the decisions. So they need to be futures informed in their decision making. And I do think that the role of the Foresight practitioners is to understand when do they need to put more futures into their consideration and when should they just leave them alone. Because sometimes they shouldn't think too much about the future. They should just run faster in the direction they're going into already. So it depends would be my answer. So for this white paper, you've talked to different Foresight practitioners from a diverse set of organizations. Is there something that has surprised you?
I would say maybe that's the hindsight that spoke to me early on, saying that the diversity was the reason we jumped into it. Because I would also say that was actually what surprised me, was that when we really dived into the questions and saying exactly how are you organized, who are you reporting to? Where in the organization are you placed, and what are the kind of tools you use, and who are you providing insights to? All those questions actually made us realize that there is a big difference here. Everyone is working in different ways. So I thought that was surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think that we are seeing, in general, seeing an increased interest in foresight? We know that the UN has listed foresight as one of the 5 tenets in their quintet of change, one of the 5 things that people of the future must be able to do, a capability they must have. But that's the UN system. Do you see a general awareness or interest that has spiked in terms of foresight?
Yeah, definitely. We see those signals all over. It's a difficult thing to do structured research around, but still a lot of signals are definitely supporting this argument. And simply a simple way of seeing that for our side is that we have an increasing ask for people that are working with foresight in organization. So definitely a spike.
So would you also consider this spike to be the start of a trend where we can see the foresight practitioner role develop into something else or into something more perhaps in the coming years? What is your perspective on that?
I do think that we speak a lot about bias when we do foresight, right? And I clearly have a bias here. This is, the whole purpose of the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies. That is to inspire organizations out there to work more structured with foresight. So I want this to happen, but I also see it happening, and the reason I see it happening is yeah, you know me, Togi. I love to use banal analogies, but within cycling, right, we have had the Team Sky, now Team Ineos, speaking about marginal gains, right? So focusing on everything, just the small details, and doing that will help you just in the long run be superior to your competitors. We have that same phenomena in organizations. I think the reason that organizations haven't picked up on foresight early on, because it's a discipline that has been existing since the 60s, is that there's a very long time before you actually do something until you can measure the difference. But organizations are picking up for several reasons. One is that the landscape around them is becoming increasingly complex, and we see an accelerating pace of change. So the tools, methodologies, the way we speak about the future becomes more and more attractive and understandable for leaders out there, because they see that the old domain of trying to predict the future and just running faster in the same direction no longer suffice in this complex world. So I used to say that the future is getting closer and closer, and that actually speaks to the necessity of applying different tools.
All right, and I guess this was the cue. As soon as Lasse breaks out the cycling analogies, I know it's time to switch gears. So please let me introduce Strategic Foresight Leader at IKEA Group, Maria Åkerlund. Nice to have you with us. Let me just dive right into it and ask you to briefly describe your background and how you ended up working with foresight in IKEA.
Yes, and thank you. Huge thank you for having me. I'm so honored. I started out actually in the market research industry long time ago in '99, working with traditional consumer research. So it's not until around 2010 I joined Ericsson and their consumer lab unit. And this was during the time when Internet of Things were really growing. And we wanted to start to understand, okay, so how might life change when everything is connected? We explored things, right? Like how will you view time when you are connected while commuting? How will you experience the commuting time, and how will it change how we commute, for example? So that is around that time I started to look more into the future and not only in consumer insights and research. But then I did a little bit of a break from insights and foresight and worked for a non-profit fitness organization. And the reason why I mention this is because during that time I was responsible for coaching and motivating 100 volunteers, which I realized helped me in the area of foresight going forward, helping getting people engaged, motivate them, and come together and co-create. After that, I had a little bit of a fitness break and went into IKEA. But the largest franchisee of ours called Inca. And there I was responsible for their macro insights and macro foresights, which we didn't really call it. We called it macro trends. So I was responsible for trend scanning and signal scanning from a macro point of view, but also from a more of a retail and industry point of view. And then after a short fitness break again, I joined the IKEA Global Insights team, responsible for what we call our STEEP analysis, or the environmental scanning, which IKEA has done for many, many years, and I became responsible for that one in 2021. But then we realized that we need to have even more foresight capabilities or structured foresight capabilities. So my role was turned into a strategic foresight leader role in 2022, and now I'm supposed to develop the strategic foresight capabilities within the IKEA organization, the brand owner. And as you can hear, I don't have any kind of formal foresight background or formal training in foresights. I have taken the Copenhagen Institute of Future Studies strategic foresight or applied strategic foresight training, which was super good basis to start out from for me. But that is kind of the only formal education I have. But then through the network, SIFs and other foresight practitioners, I've slowly but steadily become better in strategic foresight. So that is me, shortly.
So before I know Toke is thinking about some remark about future fitness and so forth, and I'll leave that to you later now, Toke. But could you describe a little bit more about how your function is organized?
Yeah, so as I indicated, I'm part of the Global Insights team within IKEA. So this Global Insights team has the responsibility to capture insights across the different business units across IKEA. So we're across, functional cross business area team. And in that insights team, we have a smaller part that is responsible for strategy insight, we call them. And that team is responsible for creating a bit of a common starting point for all our strategies, strategic insights, common starting point. And then foresights in that team is responsible for bringing the future's perspective into that common starting point. So we are in the insights team that sits across different business units.
And what's your reflections around that? Is that the ideal position according to you, or do you see other alternatives? Or
yeah, that is a question I've asked myself when I started. Do we want to be part of the insights team, or do I think we should be a standalone foresights team somehow? And I think there are pros and cons with both setups. I actually kind of like that we are part of the insights team though. Because then we have a route into the business. We were talking about this before, the challenge of landing foresight into the business. And when you're part of the insight function, you can combine foresights and the more here and now insights. And I think that becomes an even more sometimes powerful and easier to land package, if you like, for the business. But of course, I've thought about having a separate foresight function and become more free. Is that the right word? Or have a more free space. But then you become also disconnected. So.
Now, maybe an extremely broad question, but what do you think that IKEA gets out of having a foresight function?
Yeah. Well, we bring up something in the paper. that is very difficult for organizations to kind of stop in their daily business and pause and think about the future. And that is, of course, also true at IKEA, where retailer and lost sales today is forever lost sales. And I think by having a Foresight team or Foresight function, there are some people, at least in the organization, that are allowed to take and look beyond the here and now, and look into the future, and help the rest of the business to be able to do so too. I think that is the main.
Yeah, and I mean that's a big question. That's also a big task, right? So how do you ensure that you bring in diverse perspectives and collaborate around these foresight studies and exercises you do?
Yeah, well, that is something that I felt very important when I started in 21, both because of my own background. I don't sit on any old answers. I don't think that any foresight practitioner or anyone sits on all the answers. That has been one of my goals already from start, to bringing a diverse set of perspective into the work we do in foresight. And for example, when we do this environmental scanning that we still do, I try to bring people on board from treasury, from risk and compliance, from innovation, from many parts of the organization, because I know that they sit on signals that they have seen, insights that are important, trends that they have captured, previous foresight work that they've done that can bring a lot of competence into this process. And then, of course, also bringing in external expertise, interviewing people, connecting with external foresight network. And to do that, there I think I have a lot to gain from my experience in that non-profit fitness organization, to motivate people to contribute, to be a little bit humble, and ensure them that I'm really interested in your honest opinion and your honest knowledge that you sit on that I might not sit on.
Can I jump in with a question here?
Yeah.
So it's just a clarification thing. So you said that in your foresight function, you, in answering Lasse's question, that you get insights from a diverse set of expertises within IKEA and from outside. So
Yes.
My question is, in those dialogues and in those exercises and interviews, do you get the chance to affect the future's thinking or future's mindset back again? So what I'm asking is, let's say that somebody from another department has talked to you. Can you give them some nuggets of future's thinking that they can bring back to their to their part of the organization?
Indeed, really good question. And that is also one of the powers of doing this collaborative approach. You create ambassadors, and when you're brought on in the process of creating foresights, you embrace it and you learn from others, and the thoughts that you brought into that process are evolved, and you bring them back in maybe a more evolved shape. So yes, indeed, I think that they bring with them increased futures literacy and future thinking back into the business.
In doing this work, you are reliant upon other people around the organization. One of the characteristics that are common for most foresight practitioners is that they don't have the leadership mandate over the rest of the organization, so they cannot say you need to attend this meeting, meaning that you actually need to encourage them and incentivize them. Is that the same thing in IKEA?
Oh, absolutely. It is. And I think all of us are very keen to learn. I think a lot of people have this growth mindset within IKEA. So just having a place where you can talk about things outside your own little area that you're working on and learn from others, that is an incentive for many people to join these discussions. Not all of them, of course, because they are need to focus on the here and now. But a lot of people really enjoy being part of this and being asked to take part.
So that doesn't appear to be a challenge. Are there any other, major challenges related to your role as a Foresight practitioner?
Yeah, I think it's good with collaborative approaches and people pitch in, but I also believe it's very strong if you have a common governance, a forum or governance function somehow, and we do not really have that yet. Within IKEA, I would say for strategic foresight particularly. There are, of course, other strategic governance forum, but we don't have one place where we can say, okay, these are the different possible futures. How can we jointly decide that these are the opportunities or threats, or however phrase it, that we're going to focus on? That forum does not exist. So that is a bit of a challenge. And as we were on to before, the here and now thinking, that people don't allow themselves to stop and pause, and at least not the key decision makers always have the time to stop and pause and think about the future always.
Yeah, and just to second that, what we often see is that when you rely upon voluntarily participation, then most of the people that commit time to this are already somehow futures oriented, futures informed, and have the mindset that are needed, whereas the ones that are much more focused on the here and now and maybe have some more blind sides, they are more difficult to get into the organization, right, or into the conversation. Can you're nodding, so it seems like you also have that challenge.
Yeah, indeed. I know it was not a question, but I just want to share that I think by having those ambassadors and also trying to connect the dots. So this is the futures that we see, and trying to connect it to, okay, so what might it imply also for the here and now? Or bringing up those signals of change that actually are visible here and now and make it tangible for people, then it's easier to also bring the people who are a little bit more busy here and now with you on the journey towards the future we want to see.
And can I jump in here again, because then I'm putting myself into the place of you and also the people who are coming to your meetings and interviews and exercises, and I'm thinking that, are you considering what you give them, that they need to bring some sort of optimism or hope or actionability? Or what I'm getting at is that if they come back into the rest of the organization after a talk with you and everything is doom and gloom, then perhaps that's not too good. So what I'm asking here is there a way for you to try to leverage optimism and I don't know, agency in for the future into what you're doing?
Also a good question. The doom and gloom feedback is something that we often get, I must say, and difficult to not get into that space right now in the times we're in. But I tend to say that we can always have an impact on the future with the decisions we take here and now, with the actions we take. We can have an impact on the future. We can make it better. But it's difficult indeed. I'm not sure if that is the answer to your question. I don't have the full answer how to do that, but we are trying to flip it a little bit into opportunities as well, not only into doom and gloom threats.
No, and also just to reflect upon that, I do think that some of the best processes we have is actually where there's some extent of brute force of the people attending, because when we have everyone echoing in the room that the future is it's necessary to do structured foresight and so forth. When we have someone in the room saying, I mean, I don't need that, I know what to do, so why are you helping me? Then that really forces you to be concrete and understand within which domains is foresight a necessity, and where can we actually make more value by staying away, right? Because it's not that everyone needs to think about 10 years ahead all the time, because if everyone did that, we wouldn't move, right? So I think that also speaks to what I think in the interviews we had and in our work with Foresight practitioners, it becomes more and more clear that the success of the function is not how good you are at foresight. It's how good you are at infusing futures thinking into the organization. And it sounds like it's the same, but it's two very distinct things, right? Because Maria can only take so much decisions on behalf of IKEA, whereas if you can influence all the people in IKEA with just a small percentage, allowing them to take more futures-informed decisions, you've really made a difference. And that is more dependent on your ability to communicate and to think in governance structure and processes than your ability to conduct foresight.
Indeed.
Sorry, I'm not doing very well in asking questions here, but maybe that relates to, Maria, some of the methodologies that you apply and so forth. Could you speak into what you might find most useful when you do your work?
Yeah, I can do that. I'm personally relatively new in the foresight area, as I said, but IKEA has been working with foresight for quite some time, certain types of foresight. So and something that I've adopted that I really find valuable is our environmental scanning. And I know that you can talk about horizon scanning and scannings, and that's it, but I try to differ between environmental scanning and horizon scanning. So the environmental scanning we do is capturing those kind of big macro driving forces, the macro megatrends in the world around us, that we do that according to the STEEP V framework. And that has been super helpful to create this baseline for other types of foresight, for scenarios, scenario planning, and so on and so forth. And it also gave me a little bit of a confidence, I must say, when you feel that you're on top of those big macro drivers and megatrends and have created those yourself. It creates a little bit of a confidence to also come with other types of foresights. For example, I have this challenge, I didn't mention before, that people expect foresights to almost be forecasts and give the same quantifiable kind of data as other type of insights. And this environmental scanning becomes a little bit of an in-between and a thing that opens doors. So that we do. But on top of that, we are also trying to structure horizon scannings that are around other type of areas, more industry-oriented or more connected to our business. And for simplicity, to explain what we are doing, I've divided it into environmental scanning and horizon scannings. So, for example, we could look into, I don't know, the future of life at home or future of retail and so on and so forth in those horizon scannings. And then utilizing the findings from these scannings of signals and trends, co-creating different possible worlds, from a macro perspective and scenarios from this more industry perspective. That is some of the things that we use that are regular. And then personally, I love to pose those critical or provocative what ifs in different settings, even though I don't run big future scenarios through a lot of, I could pose more critical what if to expand people's thinking about the future. It doesn't become as cumbersome to read through or immerse yourself in, but yet it can stretch your thinking. And another very hands-on tool and thing that we use is the futures wheel, which I also like, where you put a change or a signal into the center, and then you kind of in a structured way go through the first and second and third level of implications. That also helps people to stretch their thinking into the future in a very hands-on way that I like.
And how do you ensure that that to communicate the work you do, is that how do you ensure that this is infused into the, I mean, the decision makers that actually would benefit of knowing about this work?
And there are a little bit of an opportunity for us to improve. So the environmental scanning has been co-created with so many people who are connected to the strategies that we would like to inform. So there we kind of have created ambassadors, as I was saying, really throughout the creation process of that environmental scanning. But of course we do workshop with the people who are going to then strategize to co-create, okay, so what does this really mean? Taking people from the what we've found to the so what, so they can do the now what in their strategies. So that, of course, we're doing workshopping and trying to get into the processes of creating the strategies and our strategic innovations in a kind of business consultancy way. Could be improved. But then you were talking about something where I feel that we could really improve, or I could improve, and that is those more immersive communications to reach the many people across IKEA. So that is something that we're trying to evolve going forward.
Yeah, and how, I mean, how do you measure your success then? Again, a very big question here, but how do you measure your success of doing foresight within IKEA?
Yeah, good. Also, good question. We don't measure foresight strictly. Maybe one should do it. We don't do that. But I measure success as in people are referring to insights about the future that we have provided in these different initiatives, the horizon scannings and the environmental scannings, and in the workshop with the strategy owners. When they refer to that in decision, in basis for decision making or in strategies as such, then I feel successful, or we feel successful in the team. But also when people lean in and want to contribute in creating those foresight, that is the success factor for me as well, because then you know you're onto something important and interesting for people. And if I compare to my previous career in consumer research, unfortunately, the one-to-one success factors are not as visible. So when you're working with concept and product testing and you see the product out in the stores, it's very easy to say, okay, I succeeded, to convince them. But of course, somehow that is what you would love to see, that the strategic foresight that we have created has guided really big decisions that we can see out there in the market. But there are so many other insights or other prerequisites that needs to be in place, or facts that you need to consider before it turns into some big reality. So I don't expect that happen too often.
No, and actually, what I experience is that the more mature the foresight function is, the less I hear the conversation evolving around how do we measure our value and how do we convince the decision makers around us about our value. Maybe kind of like the CFO doesn't need to convince people around him about the necessity of doing economic analysis, right?
Or the head of communications.
There is still some convincing there, definitely. Could you speak into a little bit about your ambitions about the foresight function within IKEA?
Yeah, I can do that. So ambition and hopes. Today, I am actually the only person within the IKEA organization who has strategic foresight or foresight in the title. We are 3 more people who work very hands-on with foresight in its different forms and shapes. But of course, that would be great to have a few more in the team, so we can do even more business precise foresight, be it retail or range or whatever it might be. So that I would love to see. But first and foremost, I think I would love to have that governance forum in place. So we have a place where we can get a tick in the box and say, okay, this is how we should then view the different futures, and this is what they mean for us and as an organization, have that decision forum. That is what I try to work towards. On top of that, creating, and I know that you're onto that at SIFs, and I'm so happy for that, but expanding and creating this kind of network of foresight practitioners so we can exchange and maybe even co-create different future scenarios, because they are not always business secrets. We will all be part of this future, and it's not only about the opportunities and threat for IKEA, it's the opportunity and threat for society that would be beneficial to co-create with others.
Yeah, and we're back to, and I don't know if this is only something you say in Denmark, but in Denmark, at least we say that the shoemakers' children are walking around in very used shoes. And I think I see the same phenomena both for myself and the Foresight practitioners out there, that the Foresight conducted about how the Foresight function will evolve is not always prioritized. Do you have an opinion about not only your own function, but how Foresight as a discipline will evolve over the coming, let's say, 5+ years?
Yeah, I haven't done Foresight on that. Unfortunately, one should probably do that. But based on, and I'm maybe not the expert to ask, but as I've not been here so long, but what I think I do see is what you were on to in the very beginning. It's difficult to land Foresight into the business decision-making processes. So I thought I did see maybe two different possible trajectories. Either that Foresight becomes even more centralized around top management and become their kind of top priority, and that the Foresight function sits there, or based on the fact that we really need to infuse Foresight into the many parts of the business. Maybe it will become even more decentralized, so there are many more smaller Foresight units across the organization. So I think it could actually go, I don't know, both ways. Yeah. In the future.
And that is a very futuristic answer, because never be too deterministic, speak about different options, and I can second that. And I really do think that there is a lot of change within our field coming ahead, and I really do think that the necessity to continuously stay on top of your field is there basically, and understand how does different practitioners work and what are the tools you can use, and I mean that this is probably one of the longest conversations I've had for a couple of months without mentioning AI. So also the tools of AI and how they will influence our decision making. I do think that is extremely interesting, and maybe, I mean, is that something that you are worried about? Something that you are embracing within your field?
I wouldn't say that I'm worried. I'm more optimistic. So I think that we should try to work together with AI. I went to this speech about AI centaur, where half human, half AI, and that kind of image speaks to me, where we really leverage the possibilities of AI. So I'm not afraid, though I know that part of what we do will probably be done by AI or in the future, and I would love to explore it even further. We have not done that systematically yet, but of course that is something that we also talk about: AI for scanning, AI for synthesizing, generative AI for bringing possible future scenarios to life. So of course, but I do see a lot of possibilities. My only concern is, as we all have, we are biased, and so are AI. and it can just explode. But that is not connected only to Foresights, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I will not tire you about my opinion on this, and I've tried to put some of it into the white paper, but we want to have some time for some questions in the end. So final question for now, Maria. If there's someone listening that are considering making their own or advocating for having a Foresight function within their organization, is there something you could advise them on, some arguments for actually introducing that into their organization?
Yeah, first of all, just trying to make it as tangible as possible. How it can help the business, and do some examples. So I don't know, connecting the dots between the future and the here and now, and how it can help you to see things differently, and that it actually can create better competitive advantages if you're on top of the future compared to just looking at here and now, like climbing into a rabbit hole that has a dead end. And there are many examples of the past, like Nokia and Fawcett, that did not do this and did not explore different possible futures, and therefore they are not as strong today as they were. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Toge, should we take some questions for the audience, if we have some?
We have some. We actually got a lot of questions, and some of them we have touched upon in some ways. So let's just go for it. And the first one I want to bring up is Stephen, who caught me saying that it's 8 different organizations that was engaged in the white paper. And Stephen asks, were these groups equally represented between businesses, NGOs, and governments? And I think I can answer no for now, but perhaps you can expand a bit on what the choice was for these organizations, and then I can plug our affiliate report after that.
Yeah, so this is definitely not, I would say, a thoroughly conducted study that could be peer-reviewed and so forth. So what we did was reach out to our network, and our network consists of people that are working structured with Foresight, and that happened to be very focused on corporates. So there are I think one nonprofit and one governmental body. Besides that, it's corporates.
Yeah, so I can also say to Stephen that if you're looking for more perspectives on this, we have actually just this Monday, last Monday, sorry, it's Monday today, we published a report on the future of philanthropy that is focused on foundations and NGOs. So feel free to find that on our website as well. And you ask, will we see more reports that cover the whole segment of NGOs and governments and businesses and so forth? I don't think that we can promise white papers exactly like this, but we can promise that we work across the entire range, and we do produce knowledge and insights and inspiration across the entire board. So great question, thank you for that. And now,
maybe just a shout out to Filea that were
yes,
sponsoring the report, or maybe we helped them do the philanthropic Foresight report.
Yeah, and we are very proud of it. It's fantastic to say the least. So Yelena asks you, Maria, you have said today that we realized we needed more Foresight capabilities at IKEA. So what drove this realization?
We want to stay successful also in the 80 years from now. We have been successful for many years, but the market is very volatile with great competition. And we all know about, if we call it polycrisis or whatever we call it, we are in turbulent times. So therefore, there's been much greater focus on Foresights
All right, fantastic, thank you. And there is also a question for you, Maria, from Gael that asks, how did you get the C-levels on board with Foresight? So you gave some general advice a moment ago. Perhaps you can speak a bit more, as much as you're comfortable with, to your concrete discussions and advocacy internally in IKEA.
On C-level, they want foresights, but I don't. Our strategic foresight unit do not interact directly that much with C-level directly, but they are opening up for that. When it comes to impacting them, we are trying to impact middle management, those who are working with the strategies, working with innovation, and what speaks to them is action. So maybe I wasn't clear enough, but trying to connect what we see about the future with some concrete implications here and now, or impact on the decisions that we should take here and now, or even those critical provocations, those what ifs, based on those things we see about the future, and posing them to those middle management, if you like. That has been very effective from our side.
Fantastic. And then there is a last question, and I'm going to ask you to respond first, Lasse, and then you, Maria. And that is if there is any industries that you think is particularly important to plan long-term scenarios for. And I know that this is also a very broad question, and what I'm looking for is your, if you can muse a bit about that.
I mean, there are a lot of industries where it's extremely important, and I do think that the most obvious industries, they are already futures informed, right? I've been working at SIFs for more than 8 years now, and I see that it's changing from time to time which industries are most aware of the long-term future. And I think one of the characteristics is that they are typically most aware a little bit too late. So instead of me mentioning particular industries, I would say that all industries needs foresight work, and you actually will have a competitive advantage if people like me are not saying that this industry is extremely important, because then you would know and before the others and be able to position yourself ahead. But also I do think, and I know this is something that people working with foresights have said over the past 60 years, that we right now live in a very interesting time where a lot of things are up for change. And I think that particularly the geopolitical situation, the environmental crisis we have, and AI coupled together, that gives us so much uncertainty that I have difficulties thinking about any industry where it's not extremely important to conduct structured foresight.
All right, and now to the very unfair question, the same for you, Maria, and perhaps you can take the vantage point of retail and say that from your vantage point, can you see any of your collaborators or industry colleagues or people that are connected to your organization where you think, okay, so that's an industry where they need to really amp up their foresight work?
I must admit that I don't have a good answer to that. So no, but I'm a little bit into what Lasse is on there, that everyone benefits from foresight, but I guess all decisions might not benefit from foresight that you were on to before, Lasse. Sometimes you need to step out and just realize foresight, it's not the place for foresights now. So when it comes to businesses and needing to step up, I think, aren't we all needing to step up our foresight capabilities, regardless of industry?
Yeah, I would agree, of course. And we don't have time for any more questions. So first of all, thank you so much to you, Maria. It's been fantastic speaking to you. And thank you to you, Lasse, as well, of course. And I just want to thank everybody listening as well and watching in, and remind you that if you want to work more with strategic foresight and you want to take part in the work we do here at the organization, we have these organizational partnerships. And as Maria mentioned before, we have just launched a partnership network. So that means that we will host and facilitate network and collaboration between our organizational partners. If you think that's interesting, please reach out to Lasse. And then all that's left to say is thank you for tuning in, and see you again in the future.